At my sister's wedding, my family sat me on a white plastic folding chair beside the kitchen doors while distant cousins, my mother's tennis friends, and even the photographer's assistant had real seats. Not a bad seat, not a seat near the back, a chair. No tablecloth, no champagne flute, no linen napkin, no little card with my name printed in calligraphy like everyone else had. Just a cheap white folding chair pushed into a shadowed corner beside the swinging service doors, close enough to the kitchen that every time someone rushed through with a tray, hot air and the smell of garlic butter hit my face. 15 minutes after I walked out of that ballroom, the music stopped. The bar closed. The caterers froze service. The groom's family learned the truth. And the $250,000 reception my sister had built like a fairy tale collapsed so fast that by midnight, half the guests had videos of my mother screaming in the parking lot. I know how that sounds. Some people will say, I waited too long. Some will say, I chose the cruelest possible moment. Some will say, I should have handled it privately, quietly, like a good daughter, like a bigger person, like the version my family had spent 34 years training me to be. Believe me, I have asked myself those questions. I have sat alone in my Manhattan apartment, replaying that night until sunrise. I have wondered whether there was a softer way, a cleaner way, a way that did not involve a ballroom full of doctors, socialites, cousins in satin dresses, and my sister standing beneath imported white roses while her life split open in public. Maybe there was. But before you decide I was cruel, I need you to understand what came before that night. I did not go to that wedding planning to destroy my sister. I went there to give my family one final chance to prove I was still a person to them. They answered me with a chair beside the kitchen. My name is Mara Ellison. I am 34 years old, and I work as a senior forensic accountant in Manhattan. I spend my days following money people try very hard to hide. Shell companies, fake vendors, hidden assets, forged records, inflated invoices, and corporate theft dressed up in polite language. I know what fraud looks like when it wears a suit. I know what deception looks like when it smiles across a conference table. And unfortunately, I know what betrayal looks like when it shares your last name. Numbers are emotional. People lie with words first. Eventually, if you are patient, the money tells you what really happened. A luxury charge on a stolen card tells you entitlement. A forged signature tells you someone believed they had the right to become you. By the time my younger sister, Celeste Ellison, walked down the aisle at Bellweather Hall, I already knew what she had done. I knew about the credit line opened in my name. I knew about the forged electronic signature. I knew about the prepaid phone used for verification. I knew about the vendor deposits, the custom gown, the flowers, the lighting, the premium bar, and the venue charge that made my fraud alert system light up like a fire alarm. I also knew my parents were involved enough to be dangerous and clueless enough to think they could survive it. But I still went. That is the part I am not proud of. I went because some foolish, bruised, childish corner of me still wanted to believe that if my family saw me standing there, quiet, respectful, willing to be civil on Celeste's wedding, they might remember I was their daughter too. Not their emergency fund, not their backup plan, not the responsible one who could always take the hit, because, according to them, I was stronger, their daughter, their first child, the girl who learned early that crying did not work unless your name was Celeste. In our house, Celeste's tears were a weather event. If she cried, everyone moved. My mother, Lenora, rushed in with tissues, solutions, apologies, new dresses, new phones, second chances. My father, Warren, called her sweetheart, even when she lied straight to his face. If I cried, my mother told me not to be dramatic. If I was hurt, My father told me to toughen up. If Celeste overdrew her account, I was reminded that I had always been better with money. That phrase followed me like a sentence. You have always been better with money, Mara. So I contributed to dresses, deductibles, missed bills, and fresh starts that never belonged to me. I postponed things I needed because Celeste always needed louder. Do you know what happens when a child is praised only for needing nothing? She learns to disappear politely. She learns to make herself convenient. She learns to bleed quietly so nobody has to clean the carpet. I built my life from that silence. I earned scholarships. I worked 2 jobs. I moved to New York with 3 suitcases, a used blazer, and a refusal to ask Warren or Lenora Ellison for anything again. And I succeeded. My success was quiet: a corner office with glass walls, a reliable investment portfolio, a doorman who called me Miss Ellison, and a life where every bill was paid by money I had earned. That privacy mattered to me. My credit mattered to me. My name mattered to me. Which is why, 2 months before the wedding, when I received an alert about a high limit black card account I had never opened, something inside me went still. Not shocked, not confused, still. Because when you spend your investigating fraud, you do not panic first. You preserve evidence. The application used my full legal name, my social security number, my date of birth, my income range, inflated just enough to qualify for the elite line, but not enough to trigger deeper review. The mailing address was not mine. It was Celeste's apartment. I stared at that address for a long time. Then I documented everything. For 2 months, while my mother texted me about dress codes, hotel blocks, and how important it was that I not bring any tension to Celeste's wedding, I built a file: bank alerts, transaction histories, IP logs, vendor invoices, screenshots, call records, and a timeline any investigator could follow. I watched charges bloom across the account like mold under silk: a bridal boutique deposit, a florist consultation, hair and makeup trials, a lighting designer, a string quartet, Bellweather Hall. Every few days, another piece of my sister's fantasy attached itself to my stolen name. And still, I waited. Not because I was weak, not because I wanted the wedding to happen, because I wanted to know whether my parents knew, whether Celeste would confess, whether anyone in my family would choose decency. That was my mistake. I kept looking for a conscience in people who had only ever treated me like a resource. On the afternoon of the wedding, I packed a silver clutch, my phone, my keys, and a lipstick I never ended up using. In the trunk of my car, beneath a folded wool coat, was my laptop. On that laptop was a folder labeled Celeste Wedding Fraud, Master File. Before I left my apartment, I stood in the hallway for a second longer than necessary. Normal life kept moving around me, and I thought, absurdly, maybe tonight will be normal too. Maybe my mother will hug me. Maybe my father will ask about my work without turning it into a criticism. Maybe Celeste, dressed in white, will remember that before we became rivals in our broken little kingdom, we were sisters. I was not asking for love. Not really. I was asking for one chair at one table. That was all. A place setting, a name card, a small public acknowledgement that I belonged to the family whose last name I still carried. I drove to Rhode Island with the fraud file in my trunk and my last bit of hope sitting stupidly in my chest. I did not come to that wedding planning to destroy my sister. I came to give my family one final chance. And before the first course was served, they answered me with a chair beside the kitchen. Bellweather Hall looked like the kind of place that made people lower their voices without knowing why. It sat on a hill above the Rhode Island coastline, built from pale stone with arched windows, ivy on one side, and a driveway filled with luxury cars. Valets in black coats opened doors and smiled at guests who expected to be obeyed. That was the point. Celeste had not chosen Bellweather Hall because it was beautiful. Beauty had never been enough for my sister, unless there were witnesses. She chose it because it looked like proof. Proof that she had arrived somewhere. Proof that she belonged in a world our parents had spent their lives trying to imitate from the outside. A valet reached for my keys. "Welcome to Bellweather Hall, ma'am." His politeness almost hurt. I handed him the keys and took my silver clutch from the passenger seat. Music drifted from the garden terrace. Laughter moved through the air like champagne bubbles. The late afternoon sun made every window burn gold. It was beautiful. That was what made it obscene, because I could not look at the flowers without seeing invoices. I could not hear the string quartet without seeing a charge line. I could not watch guests accept champagne without thinking of the credit account opened under my name. $18,400 for florals, $9,750 for custom lighting, $12,000 for the dance floor, premium bar, pending authorization. Inside the entrance hall, marble stairs curved beneath a chandelier the size of a small car. White roses climbed the banisters. Staff in white gloves directed guests toward the ballroom. A champagne tower glittered near antique mirrors, reflecting everyone back at themselves softer, richer, prettier. My mother would have loved those mirrors. Mara Ellison had built her personality around reflections. How things looked, how they photographed, how other people described them afterward. She did not want happiness. She wanted evidence of happiness. Celeste understood that language perfectly. I found my sister near the ballroom entrance, surrounded by bridesmaids in pale champagne dresses. She stood beneath an arch of white roses and orchids. Her custom lace gown fitted perfectly. Her veil was cathedral length. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Her smile was flawless. She looked radiant. She also looked manufactured. I knew Celeste's real smile. I had seen it when we were children, before everything between us became a competition our parents pretended not to create. Her real smile was crooked and fast. This smile had been practiced in mirrors. It had angles. It had strategy. When she saw me, the smile stayed, but the warmth never arrived. "Mara," she said, as if saying my name required generosity. "You came. You invited me." Her eyes moved over my dress. Navy silk, clean lines, no obvious label. Expensive in a way Celeste hated because she could not immediately measure it. "Well," she said softly, still smiling for the bridesmaid holding a phone nearby. "Try not to be weird tonight. Not hello, not thank you for coming. Try not to be weird." I looked at my sister in her stolen wedding gown, standing under flowers bought with my stolen credit, and for one reckless second, I nearly laughed. "Instead," I said, "Congratulations, Celeste." Her jaw tightened. Then someone called her name, and she turned away with visible relief, slipping back into the version of herself designed for cameras. Across the room, I saw Marcus Whittaker speaking with an older guest. He wore a classic black tuxedo, but there was nothing showy about him. He was handsome in a calm, sincere way with kind eyes. Marcus was the reason this whole thing felt worse. If he had been arrogant or cruel, maybe I could have watched the deception with less guilt. But was not either. The first time we met, 6 months earlier, he had asked about my work and actually listened. He thought Celeste was complicated. He did not know she was dangerous. When he saw me, his face brightened with genuine warmth. "Mara," he said, coming over, "I'm glad you made it." For a second, I did not know what to do with that sentence. No accusation hidden inside it. No demand. No performance. Just welcome. "Thank you," I said. The ceremony was beautiful. It was a safe lie. I had missed most of the ceremony intentionally. I had not been ready to watch my sister make vows of honesty while my laptop sat in my trunk containing proof of her fraud. Marcus smiled. Celeste will be happy you're here. I looked past him. Celeste was posing with one hand on her hip, chin tilted, veil arranged behind her by two bridesmaids. I'm sure, I said. Before Marcus could hear the hollowness in my voice, a woman approached from the front of the ballroom. I knew who she was before anyone introduced us. Dr. Vivian Whitaker. She wore a deep emerald gown with no visible need to impress anyone. Her silver-streaked hair was swept back from a face that had clearly spent decades making powerful people choose their words carefully. She carried authority quietly. Marcus touched her arm. Mom, this is Mara Ellison, Celeste's sister. Dr. Whitaker turned her full attention to me. She did not glance through me. She looked directly at me, as if I were a person and not an accessory to the bride. Mara, she said, it's a pleasure. Marcus has spoken highly of you. That surprised me. He has? He said you investigate financial misconduct for a living. I try. Her mouth curved slightly. People who say they try are usually better than people who say they succeed. I liked her instantly. That made the night harder. Because Dr. Whitaker represented everything my mother tried to imitate and never understood. Lenora believed elegance came from fabric and posture. Dr. Whitaker seemed to know elegance was restraint. My mother appeared moments later, as if summoned by the scent of status. Vivian, Lenora sang, touching Dr. Whitaker's arm with a familiarity she had not earned. Isn't everything just magical? Dr. Whitaker smiled politely. It is certainly impressive. Lenora accepted that as praise because she needed it to be praise. Then she saw me. The smile thinned. Mara, good. You found your way in. I did. Wonderful. Seating chart is near the ballroom doors. Her eyes flicked over my clutch, hair, and dress, searching for something wrong. Please don't hover around the family tables. Everything has been arranged very carefully. There it was. Not welcome. Logistics. I looked at Marcus, but he had been pulled into a greeting and did not hear her. Dr. Whitaker, however, did. Her gaze shifted slightly toward my mother. Lenora pretended not to notice. I'll find my seat, I said. Good, she replied. And Mara, tonight is about Celeste. I almost said, when is it not? But I swallowed it, because I was still giving them chances. The seating chart stood near the ballroom entrance in an ornate gold frame. Cream cards were arranged in perfect rows, each name written in looping calligraphy. Guests clustered around it, laughing and complimenting the design. I waited until the crowd thinned. Then I searched for the family tables. Whitaker family, table 1. Ellison family, table 2. Bridal party, table 3. Close friends, tables 4 and 5. My parents were at table 2. Celeste's college friends were close to the dance floor. My mother's tennis friends were at table 8. Warren's business acquaintances were near the premium wine service. I scanned lower, table 18, table 24, table 31. Finally, near the bottom, I found my name, Mara Ellison, table 39. For one brief, foolish second, I felt relief. Table 39 was obviously far from the center, far from family, far from any place of honor. But it was a table. My name was printed properly. I was in the room. Maybe this was as much dignity as they were capable of offering. Maybe tonight could still be civil. I picked up my clutch and walked into the ballroom. At first, the room seemed endless. Chandeliers poured warm light over polished floors. Tall centerpieces rose from gold-rimmed tables. Candles flickered in glass cylinders. The band adjusted instruments beneath hanging flowers. Servers moved like choreography. The closer tables were full of laughter, perfume, silk, and status. As I kept walking, the room changed. The centerpieces grew smaller. The candles became fewer. The music felt farther away. The beautiful lighting faded into practical shadows near the side walls. I passed table 29, then table 33, then table 36, tucked near a pillar. I slowed down. There should have been a table 39. There was not. At first, I thought I had missed it. I turned once, scanning the room again, feeling heat rise in my face. A waiter slipped past me with a tray. The kitchen doors swung open, releasing steam, noise, and the sharp smell of roasted garlic. That was when I saw it. In the narrow space beside the swinging kitchen doors sat one white plastic folding chair. No table, no charger, no glass, no napkin, no centerpiece. On the back of the chair was a torn strip of masking tape. My name was written on it in black marker. Mara. No last name, no calligraphy, just Mara. I stood there while the ballroom continued sparkling around me, and the fairy tale finally showed me its teeth. There was no table 39. There was only a chair. And my name was not printed on a card. It was written on masking tape. For a few seconds, I just stood there. The ballroom kept moving around me as if nothing had happened. Glasses chimed, guests laughed. The band played something soft and expensive, while servers glided between tables carrying trays of champagne. White roses climbed toward the chandeliers. Candlelight flickered over gold-rimmed plates, and beside the kitchen doors, in the shadow of all that beauty, was my chair. A cheap white plastic folding chair, the kind you see in church basements and school auditoriums, had been shoved into a narrow service corner where no guest should have been placed. It was angled awkwardly toward the room, not because someone wanted me to see the reception, but because that was the only way it fit, without blocking the doors completely. There was no table, no plate, no glass, no napkin, no favor box, no menu, no evidence that anyone expected me to eat, drink, toast, or be included. Just the chair and the strip of masking tape slapped across the back. Mara. 4 black letters, uneven and rushed. I stared at my name until it stopped looking like my name and started looking like a label on something stored temporarily and forgotten. I wish I could tell you. I laughed. I wish I could tell you I was too strong to care. I wish I could say I took one look at that chair and immediately became the woman who freezes fraudulent accounts for a living. But that would be a lie. For about 10 seconds, I was 18 again. I was standing in my parents' kitchen while my mother explained that Celeste needed my college savings more than I did. Because she was fragile. Because she was sensitive. Because I would always figure things out. I was 21 again, being called selfish for refusing to co-sign an apartment Celeste could not afford. I was 27 again, listening to my father tell me that birthdays mattered less when you were not the kind of person who needed attention. That chair was not a mistake. It was every old message made physical. You are useful, Mara. You are not cherished. You may attend, but only if you stay out of the frame. I sat down because my legs had gone strange beneath me. The chair creaked under my weight, not because I was heavy, but because it was cheap. The kitchen doors swung open almost immediately, and a rush of heat spilled over my shoulder. Inside, I could hear staff calling orders, plates clattering, someone asking where the vegetarian entrees were supposed to go. A server came through carrying a tray of salads. He saw me too late. The door hit the back of my chair with a hard plastic crack. The impact jolted me forward. My clutch slipped from my lap and struck the floor. My phone slid beneath the chair. My keys scattered across the polished wood like tiny silver accusations. The server froze. "Oh my God," he said, horrified. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I didn't see." "It's okay," I said automatically. He bent down so quickly, one of the salads nearly slid from the tray. "No, I'm sorry. They shouldn't have put you here." That sentence nearly broke me more than the door, because he was a stranger, a young man, probably being paid hourly to carry food through chaos. And he understood in 2 seconds what my family had pretended not to understand all night. "They shouldn't have put you here." I picked up my phone before he could reach it. "It's not your fault." A couple of guests at a nearby table had turned to look. One woman with pearl earrings gave me a soft, pitying smile, then looked away as if my humiliation were contagious. Two younger guests whispered behind their menus. Nobody said anything. That is one of the things people do not understand about public humiliation. The cruelest part is not always the person who does it. Sometimes it is the quiet room around you, full of people deciding your dignity is not worth interrupting dinner. The server apologized again. "Really?" I told him. "You did nothing wrong." He nodded, still embarrassed, and disappeared through the kitchen doors. I was still gathering my keys when my mother arrived. Mara Ellison did not rush over because her oldest daughter had just been hit by a service door. She came because people were looking. She moved quickly in her champagne-colored gown, one hand pressed lightly against her beaded waist as if she were afraid concern might wrinkle the fabric. Her hair was sculpted into place. Diamonds glittered at her ears. Her smile stayed on until she reached me. Then it vanished. She hissed. "What are you doing?" I looked up at her from the floor. "Picking up my keys." "Do not be sarcastic." I was hit by the kitchen door. Her eyes flicked toward the guests, then back to me. "Because you are blocking the service path." I stared at her. "You need to move closer to the wall," she whispered. "The videographer will be panning the room during entrances, and I do not need you looking miserable in the background." I thought about the credit account. I thought about the charges. I thought about the fraud file sitting in my car. And I thought, she is worried about the background, not the chair, not me, the background. "If you wanted me out of the video," I said quietly, "you should have put my name card in the coat closet." Her face tightened. "This is not the time for your attitude." "What time would work better?" "Mara." There was warning in my name. There always had been. When Celeste's name was spoken in our house, it meant comfort. When mine was spoken that way, it meant obedience. "Do not embarrass this family tonight," she said. The words landed strangely because I was sitting beside a kitchen door with masking tape on my chair while my stolen credit paid for imported roses 10 feet away. "Mom," I said, "look where I am sitting." "I know where you are sitting." "Do you?" Her eyes hardened. "Your sister had a complicated seating arrangement. We had to make choices. You gave me a folding chair beside the kitchen. It is one evening." "One evening," I repeated, as if humiliation had an expiration date, as if dignity could be paused until Monday. She leaned closer. "You are always so dramatic about small things." That was when Vivian Whitaker appeared. She did not sweep in. She did not raise her voice. She simply stepped into the edge of our little shadowed corner with the kind of quiet authority that made my mother straighten instantly. "Lenora," she said. My mother turned, and the transformation was immediate. Her face warmed, her posture softened, her voice lifted into the social register she used for women she envied. "Vivian," she said, "isn't everything beautiful?" Dr. Whitaker did not look at the flowers. She looked at the chair, then she looked at me. I'm sorry, she said carefully. Is this where the bride's sister is seated? My mother laughed. I hated that laugh. Light, airy, fake enough to bruise. Oh, yes, Lenora said. Mara prefers a discreet spot. She gets socially anxious in big groups. We wanted her to feel comfortable. Socially anxious. That was new. I had been called difficult, cold, jealous, dramatic, and ungrateful. Socially anxious was apparently tonight's costume. Dr. Whitaker's eyes shifted to me, not over me, to me. Is that true? She asked. The question was gentle. The room seemed to narrow around it. For one wild second, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to stand up and say, no, Dr. Whitaker, I did not request this seat. I also did not request the elite credit account your future daughter-in-law opened in my name. This wedding is a financial crime scene with centerpieces. I could have ended it right there. Maybe I should have. But I looked at my mother first. Lenora's eyes were bright with panic and warning. Do not ruin this. Do not make a scene. Do not force us to deal with what we did. And beneath that warning, something older, you will take this because you always do. I looked back at Dar Whitaker. Thank you for asking, I said. But I am exactly where my family decided I belonged tonight. Silence fell over the corner. Not the whole ballroom, just the small space around us. My mother's lips parted, then closed. Dr. Whitaker studied me for a moment, and something in her expression changed. It was not pity. I would have hated pity. It was recognition. There is an empty seat at my family's table, she said. You are welcome to join us. That offer hurt. Kindness should not hurt. But sometimes when you have been starving, the smell of bread can make you cry. A stranger had seen the insult clearly. A stranger had offered me dignity without making me beg for it. And I still said no. Because the moment I sat at Der Whitaker's table, my family would turn the story into something else. Mara made a scene. Mara attached herself to the groom's family. Mara caused tension. I had spent 2 months collecting facts. I was not going to let them bury those facts under my reaction. So I smiled, even though it felt brittle. That's very kind, I said. But no, thank you. Lenora exhaled softly. Relief. She thought she had won. Dr. Whitaker heard it. I saw that she did. She gave my mother one look, brief and elegant and devastating, then turned back to me. If you change your mind, come find me. I appreciate that. When she walked away, my mother waited until she was out of earshot before turning on me. What was that supposed to mean? What? That little performance, where my family decided I belonged. Are you trying to make me look cruel? I looked at the chair, then at the masking tape, then at the kitchen doors. No, I said. You did that without my help. Her nostrils flared. Tonight is about your sister. Whatever resentment you have carried all these years, you will not unload it here. All these years, I repeated softly. She did not hear herself. She never did. She did not hear the confession inside her accusation. That she knew there was resentment. That she knew there were years. That she knew this was not one chair, one night, one misunderstanding. It was a pattern. And still, she expected me to swallow it politely. Sit here, she said. Smile when cameras pass. And for once in your life, do not make everything harder. Then she walked away. I sat very still. The kitchen doors swung open again. This time, I shifted my knees so the edge did not hit me. On the other side of the ballroom, Celeste laughed beneath the chandeliers. Marcus touched her lower back gently as someone raised a toast. My father lifted his glass with the proud expression of a man pretending he had paid for everything in the room. Maybe some people would have called the bank then. Maybe a stronger person would have. maybe a crueler person would have. But I still waited. I took out my phone instead. Quietly, I photographed the chair from the front, then from behind. I captured the masking tape with my name in black marker, the kitchen doors inches away, the empty space where a table should have been, and the distant blur of decorated tables filled with guests who mattered more. It was not evidence of financial fraud, but it was evidence of something. Evidence that they did not forget me. They placed me. The chair was not a mistake. It was an answer. And at that point, I still had not touched the account. The wedding was still alive. They still had one more chance. First, last chance gone. That was how I labeled it in my head after my mother walked away. Not because I had arrived at Bellweather Hall with some secret revenge script already written. I labeled it that way because structure is how I survive chaos. I put things into categories, I build timelines, I separate emotion from evidence until I can breathe again. Lenora had seen the chair. She had seen me beside the kitchen doors. She had seen Dakar Vivian Whitaker notice it too. At any point, she could have corrected it. She could have blamed the planner. She could have said, "Oh my goodness, this is wrong. Mara, come with me." She could have given me a real place at a real table and saved everyone. Instead, she told me to smile if the cameras passed. So, I sat there for another few minutes, letting the kitchen doors breathe heat against my shoulder while the party continued as if I had become part of the architecture. The waiter who had accidentally hit me kept glancing over with embarrassed concern, and I gave him a small smile once, just to release him from guilt that did not belong to him. Then I saw it. 3 empty seats at a table near the side wall. It was not a good table. It was not near the family, the dance floor, or any place of honor, but it had plates, water glasses, silverware, bread baskets, human placement. After 34 years of making myself smaller for people who never became kinder because of it, something in me refused to keep sitting beside a door. Quietly I stood. I did not make a speech. I did not wave anyone over. I simply picked up the folding chair by its cold metal frame and carried it toward the empty space. The humiliation of that walk was strange. It should have crushed me, carrying my own rejected seat through a ballroom paid for with my stolen name. But each step made my thoughts clearer. People glanced at me. Of course they did. A woman carrying a folding chair in a navy silk dress through a luxury wedding reception is not invisible. But I kept my eyes forward. I was 2 steps from the empty seat when Celeste appeared in front of me. She moved fast for a woman wearing a custom gown with a cathedral-length veil. One second she was near the dance floor laughing with her bridesmaids, and the next she was blocking me, her white lace skirt spreading across the polished floor like a warning. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Moving." Her smile stayed in place because a photographer was somewhere nearby, but her eyes went sharp. "You can't sit here. There are empty chairs. This table is for Marcus's extended family." "I'm your sister." The sentence hung between us. For a moment, annoyance flickered across her face, as if biology had become an inconvenience she could not edit out of the seating chart. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "Do not do this tonight." "Do what?" "Act like you belong somewhere you don't." I looked at her. The flawless makeup, the diamonds, the gown I knew had been charged through the fraudulent account. My sister looked like a bride from a magazine, but up close, panic lived in the tight line of her mouth. Maybe some part of her knew the fantasy was fragile. She reached out and grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to leave a mark. Celeste had always been careful that way. She knew how to hurt people without creating proof. "You need to go back," she said. "To the kitchen door? To where Mom put you." Mom put me there because you told her to. Her grip tightened just slightly. There it was, the tiny confession in her fingers. I did not even want you here, she said. Mom said it would look suspicious if my only sister wasn't invited. I heard the music. I heard silverware. I heard someone laughing near the bar. But Celeste's words cut through everything. You were invited because you were necessary for the photos, she continued. That's it. You are not part of this day. You are not part of my life. So sit there quietly until the cake cutting or leave. I should have felt shocked. I did not. That was the saddest part. Some insults only hurt because they are new. This one hurt because it was old enough to have roots. I thought she stole my name, my credit, and my financial reputation. And somehow, I am still the embarrassing one. Across the ballroom, Marcus looked over. He could not hear us, but he saw Celeste's posture. He saw her hand on my wrist. He saw something was wrong. His expression shifted with concern, and for 1 second, I had a choice. I could have called him over. I could have ended the wedding right there with one public sentence. Marcus, ask your wife why my name is on the card paying for your reception. Instead, I gave him a small, reassuring smile. Maybe that sounds weak. But I did not want chaos yet. I wanted the truth to arrive with documentation. I wanted Celeste to have every chance to step away from the lie before the lie swallowed her whole. She released my wrist. Go back, she said. Second last chance gone. I carried the chair back. This time, the walk felt less like humiliation and more like evidence being collected by my own body. Let the room remember later that the bride's sister had been sent back to a service corner like an unwanted delivery. When I returned to the kitchen doors, the young waiter gave me a look so full of apology that I almost comforted him again. Instead, I sat. The chair creaked. For the first time that night, I let myself imagine opening the laptop. Not yet, I told myself. One more chance. I do not know why I gave them that last one. Maybe habit, maybe grief, maybe because children of families like mine are trained to leave the door open long after everyone else has walked through it carrying knives. I was still sitting there when my father found me. Warren Ellison moved through the ballroom with a glass of scotch in one hand and a face flushed by alcohol, pride, and insecurity. My father had always been dangerous after 2 drinks. After 1, he became charming. After 2, he became sentimental. After 3, he became honest in the worst possible way. That night, he was somewhere between king and debtor, pretending nobody could see the difference. His tuxedo looked expensive from a distance, but up close the shoulders pulled slightly when he moved. Warren had told people it was custom. I knew it was not. My father had spent his life wanting the appearance of wealth more than the discipline required to build it. The Whitakers made him nervous. Their status was real. Their confidence was quiet. Warren resented that. He wanted this wedding to transform him by association. He stopped in front of me and looked down. Your mother says you're causing problems. I moved a chair. You tried to infiltrate an important table. I stared at him. Infiltrate? You know exactly what I mean. No, I said. I really don't. His jaw flexed. This is not a night for your games, Mara. My games? You have been walking around with that wounded expression since you arrived. I am sitting beside a kitchen door. And why do you think that is? He snapped. The question landed harder than I expected. Because he did not mean, who put you here? He meant, what did you do to deserve it? That had always been the foundation of my family. If Celeste was unhappy, someone had failed her. If I was hurt, I had probably caused inconvenience. Warren leaned closer, lowering his voice. Your sister married into an important family today. Important. Do you understand that? I looked across the room at Marcus, who was speaking quietly with Dora Whitaker near the front tables. Yes, I said. I understand. No, I don't think you do. This night matters. Your mother and I sacrificed our savings to give Celeste the perfect wedding. There it was, the noble father speech. I knew the partial truth beneath it. Warren and Lenora had transferred Celeste $50,000 months earlier, believing it was going toward deposits. Celeste had told them vendors needed immediate payments. She had cried. Lenora had panicked. Warren had complained, then sent the money. But the funds had not gone where Celeste claimed. I had already traced most of it into Celeste's private investment account and luxury honeymoon reservations. My parents had been foolish, maybe willfully blind, maybe more than that. The investigation would sort out the legal edges later, but emotionally, I already knew the answer. They had chosen not to know, because knowing would have required them to stop her. Dad, I said carefully, are you sure you know how this wedding was paid for? His eyes narrowed. What is that supposed to mean? It means exactly what I asked. You think because you work in finance, you can come here and interrogate me? No. You think your little Manhattan title makes you better than us? No. You think your money makes you better than your sister? No, I said again. I think stealing makes someone worse. The words slipped out before I could soften them. For a second, Warren went still. Then his face hardened in the way it always did when truth walked too close to his pride. You are jealous, he said. I breathed in slowly. My family had spent years translating my boundaries into jealousy. If I refused to pay, I was jealous. If I objected to being insulted, I was jealous. If Celeste lied and I noticed, I was jealous. I am not jealous, I said. I am tired. He shook his head. You are ungrateful. For what? For being included. I looked at the folding chair beneath me. Included. That was what they called it. A chair beside the kitchen was inclusion. A name on masking tape was generosity. Being invited as proof that Celeste had a sister, while being treated like shame with a pulse, was apparently something I should thank them for. Warren took a drink. Then he said, You showed up without a gift. I looked back at him. What? You heard me. Your mother checked the gift table. Nothing from you. The absurdity of it was so complete that for a moment I could not answer. The wedding was being paid for with an account opened in my name, and my father was accusing me of failing to bring a gift. I did not bring a gift, I said slowly. No, you didn't. You came here to eat, judge, and make everyone uncomfortable. I have not been served food. That is not the point. What is the point, Warren? His eyes flashed at the sound of his first name. Some part of me must have already been separating. He set his glass down on the nearest cocktail table and reached into his jacket. Instead of his phone, he took out his wallet. He pulled out a $100 bill, then a 50. The bills looked small in his hand. Ridiculously small, considering the $250,000 lie surrounding us. He placed them on the cocktail table beside me. Here, he said. Pay for your plate. I stared at the money. He was not finished. Since you showed up empty-handed, at least don't be a freeloader at your sister's wedding. The band kept playing. Guests kept laughing. Celeste kept glowing beneath stolen flowers. And my father stood in front of me, offering me $150 to cover a meal I had not been given at an event funded by my stolen identity. That was the moment. Not the chair, not my mother's lie, not Celeste's hand around my wrist. The 150, because until then, some broken part of me had still been asking whether I was being too harsh, whether calling the bank during the reception would be cruel, whether family betrayal should still be handled gently because outsiders were present. But cruelty had been standing in front of me my entire life, wearing a tuxedo and calling itself my father. I looked from the bills to Warren's face. He expected shame. He expected obedience. He expected me to shrink. Instead, I felt something inside me close, quietly, permanently. "You're right, Warren," I said. He blinked. "I should not be a freeloader." His mouth tightened, but he did not speak. I stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. I left the $150 on the cocktail table. Then I picked up my clutch and walked out of the ballroom. No announcement, no tears, no overturned glass. Behind me, the music continued. People laughed. Champagne flowed. Celeste's stolen fantasy remained alive for a few more minutes, but whatever part of me had still wanted a family had died beside that kitchen door. The $150 stayed on the cocktail table behind me. I did not touch it at first. I did not even look back. I just walked through a ballroom full of people who had no idea that the entire reception was balanced on a stolen identity and a daughter who had finally stopped swallowing pain politely. The music kept playing. That was the strangest part. When something inside you breaks, you expect the world to notice. You expect a glass to shatter, the lights to flicker, someone to gasp. But the band continued its soft, elegant song. Guests laughed over champagne. A bridesmaid adjusted her hair in the reflection of a gold charger. Somewhere near the front tables, my sister's new husband smiled at something one of his relatives said, unaware that the woman he had married had built their wedding on fraud. And my father's words followed me across the floor. "Pay for your plate. Freeloader. Empty-handed." I had been called many things by my family over the years. Sensitive, difficult, cold, ungrateful, jealous, dramatic. But freeloader was almost impressive in its cruelty. It required him to ignore every dollar, every sacrifice, every quiet rescue I had ever given them. It required him to stand inside a wedding funded by my stolen name and accuse me of taking too much. Near the edge of the ballroom, I stopped. Not because I wanted to go back, because I realized I was waiting. Even after the chair, Celeste's wrist, my mother's lie, and Warren's cash, I paused long enough for one impossible thing to happen. I waited for my father to call after me. I waited for my mother to appear with panic in her face and say, "Mara, wait." I waited for Celeste to realize I was leaving and feel even a flicker of shame. No one came. That is the part I hate admitting. Not that they hurt me. I had known that for years. I hate admitting that I still hoped they would stop. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter, lined with oil paintings and white arrangements. Staff moved quickly, trained not to look curious. I passed a coordinator who smiled professionally, then glanced behind me as if expecting someone else to follow. No one did. I reached the entrance hall and crossed the threshold into the cold night air. In a way, I was not just leaving the ballroom. I was stepping outside a version of myself that had existed for 34 years. Behind me, Bellweather Hall glowed through its windows, warm and golden and completely false. A valet straightened when he saw me. "Would you like your car, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. He hurried to retrieve it, and I stood under the portico with my arms folded around my clutch. My phone buzzed once in my hand. For 1 second, my heart jumped stupidly. Maybe Mom. Maybe Dad. maybe some last-minute crack in the cruelty. It was a promotional text from the hotel where I had booked a room I would never sleep in. I deleted it. My car arrived a minute later, charcoal gray beneath the lanterns, sleek and quiet. I saw the valet notice it, saw the brief recognition that the woman seated beside the kitchen doors was not what her family had presented her to be. That should not have mattered. It did. For one small second, I wanted the universe to witness that they had not reduced me to that chair. They had tried. They had failed. I tipped him too much because my hands needed something to do. Then I drove to the far edge of the parking lot, away from the entrance, away from the white floral arch, away from the rented fantasy. I parked beneath a line of trees where the ballroom lights were visible but muted. Only then did my body catch up with me. My hands started shaking, not delicately. They shook so hard, I had to grip the steering wheel with both hands and press my forehead against it. My breath came unevenly. My chest hurt. For 30 seconds, maybe a minute, I was not a forensic accountant. I was not composed. I was not strong. I was just a daughter alone in a car, realizing no one in her family had followed her. I still wanted my mother. That is the ugliest truth in this story. I wanted Lenora to come outside, not as the mother of the bride, not as the woman worried about cameras, but as my mother. I wanted her to knock on the window and say she had seen the chair, really seen it. I wanted her to say it was wrong. I wanted her to choose me without being forced. I wanted Warren to be ashamed. I wanted Celeste to apologize. I wanted one person with my blood to prove that I was not crazy for expecting basic decency. The ballroom kept glowing. No one came. So I sat back, wiped my face with the heel of my hand, and let the last bit of hope leave my body quietly. I opened the trunk from the driver's seat, stepped out, and retrieved my laptop from beneath the folded wool coat. The night wind moved under my dress. Somewhere behind me, people cheered inside the ballroom, probably for a toast or announcement. The sound floated across the lot like it belonged to another life. Back in the car, I locked the doors. That mattered to me, not because I thought anyone would attack me. Because for once, I wanted a boundary no one in my family could cross. I placed the laptop on the passenger seat and waited for it to wake. The screen lit my hands blue-white. They were still trembling, but less now. Familiar systems calmed me. Password, secondary authentication, encrypted drive, folder path, Celeste wedding fraud, master file. I clicked it open. There it was. 2 months of patience, 2 months of silence, 2 months of letting my family reveal themselves while I documented the truth. The subfolders lined up like witnesses. Bank alerts, card application, IP logs, vendor charges, security stills, parent transfer, timeline. I opened the photograph I had taken inside the ballroom. The white plastic chair, the torn masking tape, my first name in black marker, the kitchen doors behind it. That picture would not prove identity theft. It would not freeze a card. It would not put Celeste in legal danger. But it proved something to me that I had needed proof of my entire life. They knew what they were doing. Not the fraud, maybe. Not all of it. I still did not know how much Warren and Lenora understood. But the humiliation, the exclusion, the casual decision that I could be placed beside a service door and expected to smile, that was deliberate. The chair was not a mistake. It was an answer. I moved to the timeline document. At the top, I had written, unauthorized credit account opened under Mara Ellison identity. Suspected user, Celeste Ellison. Below that were dates, times, amounts, references. Clean, calm, professional. The opposite of what I felt. The first alert, the application metadata, the mailing address, the prepaid verification number, the first boutique charge, the flowers, the lighting, the venue deposit, the swelling balance. The $50,000 transfer from Warren and Lenora that had never reached the vendors it was supposedly meant to pay. I had built the file because I needed to protect myself, but I had waited because I wanted to protect some imaginary version of them. That was over. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over the bank's executive fraud line, already saved from my earlier calls. This was the last private second before consequences. I knew that once I made the call, I could not put the lie gently back together. The account would freeze, pending charges would flag, vendors would be notified, Bellweather Hall would have to protect itself. Celeste would not be able to smile her way through it, and I would no longer be the quiet daughter absorbing the damage. I thought of Warren's $150 on the cocktail table. I thought of the word freeloader. Then I pressed call. As the line rang, I looked through the windshield at Bellweather Hall glowing above the lawn. Celeste's fantasy was still alive in there. The band was still playing. The champagne was still flowing. My family still believed I had left because I was humiliated. They were wrong. I left because I was done. A woman answered with the calm, polished tone of an elite fraud department. Good evening. This is account security. How may I assist you? I closed my eyes once, then opened them. My name is Mara Ellison, I said. I need to report an active identity theft case involving a credit account opened fraudulently in my name. My voice did not shake. That almost scared me. The agent began verification. Full legal name, date of birth, last 4 digits, security code sent to my real phone, address confirmation, recent authorized accounts. I answered every question the way I answered questions in depositions. Clearly, calmly, with no extra emotion. Then she reached the account. There was a pause. Ms. Ellison, she said, are you confirming that you did not open this credit account? Yes. And are you confirming that the charges currently associated with the account were not authorized by you? I looked again at the glowing windows. Yes, I said. The current balance and pending authorizations total approximately $250,000. Are you disputing all activity? My grip tightened around the phone. Yes, I said. All of it. Understood. I am placing a hard freeze on the account now. No thunder cracked. No lights went out. No one inside the ballroom screamed. Not yet. There was only the faint sound of keyboard clicks through the phone and my own breathing in the dark car. That was how my family ended. Not with a slap. Not with a shouted confession. With a fraud agent saying, the account has been frozen. And me whispering, thank you. After the agent froze the account, she gave me a case number. I wrote it down in the Notes app on my phone, then copied it into the master timeline on my laptop. That probably sounds cold. Maybe it was. But when your life is being used without your permission, documentation becomes a kind of self-defense. Every date, every amount, every reference number was a brick in the wall I was building between myself and the people who had treated my identity like a spare key. The agent told me the fraud department would begin reviewing the application history, transaction records, verification trail, and supporting documents. She told me I should file a police report and preserve all evidence. She told me not to contact the suspected user directly. I almost laughed at that part. Do not contact the suspected user directly. The suspected user was inside Bellweather Hall wearing a cathedral veil and dancing under flowers billed to the account. But I only said, understood. When the call ended, the car felt too quiet. Through the windshield, I could still see the warm windows of the ballroom. From that distance, the wedding looked peaceful, beautiful even. That is how lies work from far away. They soften around the edges. They become scenery. Up close, they have receipts. I opened the encrypted folder again. Celeste Wedding Fraud. Master File. The first subfolder was labeled Bank Alerts. That was where the whole thing had started. 2 months before the wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, I was in my office reviewing expense anomalies for a corporate client when my phone buzzed with a credit monitoring notification. At first, I barely looked at it. I have multiple layers of financial monitoring because of my work. Alerts happen, most are harmless, a balance update, a hard inquiry notice, a system verification. Then I saw the words, "New revolving credit account opened." The issuer was one I used professionally but not personally. The product was an elite black card line with a credit limit high enough to make my stomach tighten. I had not applied for it. I remember sitting very still in my glass-walled office while people moved around outside with coffee cups and laptops and normal problems. My first thought was not Celeste. It should have been. But sometimes your mind protects you for 2 seconds before it lets the truth in. I pulled the credit file. The account was opened under my full legal name, Mara Ellison. Not Mara Ellison, the way most people wrote it. My full name, including the middle name I had stopped using years ago. It used my social security number, my date of birth, a former family address tied to my early tax records. And then, the detail that made my hands go cold. The mailing address was Celeste's apartment, not my parents' house, not a random address. Celeste's apartment in Boston, the one with the white sofa she could not afford, and the gold mirror she called vintage, even though I had seen the receipt from a furniture outlet. I downloaded the alert. Then I opened a file. I did not cry. I did not call her. I did not call my mother. I did not give anyone the chance to explain before I understood what needed explaining. That is receipt 1. Receipt 2 was the stolen documents. Warren and Lenora kept old family paperwork in a filing cabinet in the den. I knew this because I had organized it for them twice. Social security cards, birth certificate copies, old passports, tax returns, medical insurance forms, school records, everything a careful person locks away. My parents kept in hanging folders beneath a stack of expired appliance warranties. Celeste had been in that house almost every weekend during her engagement. She claimed she was helping Mom go through childhood photos for a wedding slideshow. She sent family group chat updates about how emotional it was to find old memories. Lenora replied with heart emojis. Warren wrote things like, "My girls." My girls. I wonder if he meant both of us then. Because while Celeste was supposedly sorting photos, she had access to every document needed to impersonate me, my birth certificate copy, my old W-2s, a tax form with my full legal name and partial employment history, even an old photocopy of my social security card from when my parents had helped with college financial aid forms. That was the part that made me angriest at first. Not that Celeste had used the documents, that my parents had guarded nothing that belonged to me. They would lock up Lenora's jewelry. They would ensure the silver Warren inherited from his mother. But my identity sat in a drawer beside printer paper because, in that house, my life had never been treated as something worth protecting. Receipt 3 was the application. The bank sent me access to the disputed application file after I verified who I was. The signature was electronic, my name typed in a clean little box pretending consent had happened. The income estimate was close enough to be believable and wrong enough to expose research. Celeste had taken my job title from LinkedIn, probably searched salary ranges, then inflated the number. It was not a wild lie. That was what made it effective. Fraud survives by staying just inside the borders of plausibility. The employment section listed my firm, though the office phone number was not ours. It was a prepaid number routed through an answering app. The verification call had been answered by a woman claiming to be me. I listened to the recording 3 times. The voice was not Celeste's exactly. She had flattened it, made it calmer, older, but I heard her in the rhythm. I heard the tiny impatient pause before she answered questions. I heard the girl who used to pretend to be our mother on the phone when she wanted to get out of school. The bank representative asked, "Are you authorizing this credit line?" And my sister, using my name, said, "Yes." One word. That was all it took to turn my reputation into her funding source. Receipt 4 was the spending pattern. At first, the charges were small enough to test the account. A bridal boutique deposit for $2,500. A floral consultation for $850. A hair and makeup trial for $2,200. A designer shoe purchase for $1,975. Then nothing for 4 days. That gap mattered. In fraud cases, people often test the water. They wait to see whether the victim notices, whether the card issuer flags activity, whether the first small theft opens the door to bigger theft. Celeste waited. Nobody stopped her, so she grew bolder. Venue deposit, Bellweather Hall, custom lace gown, final payment, imported roses, premium bar package, lighting design, transportation deposit, string quartet, videographer, luxury linens, guest welcome baskets. Every charge told the same story. Not desperation, not survival, not a mistake. Entitlement. My sister had not stolen bread. She had stolen a fantasy. She had taken my credit score, my income history, my years of discipline, and converted them into orchids and champagne. Receipt 5 was my parents' transfer. That one hurt differently. A month before the wedding, Warren and Lenora wired Celeste $50,000. The memo line read, "Wedding deposits." When I first found it, I thought maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe my parents really had paid a large portion, and Celeste had only used the fraudulent account to fill gaps. That would still be criminal, but it would explain some of the numbers. So I followed the money. The $50,000 did not go to Bellweather Hall. It did not go to the florist. It did not go to the caterer, the band, the lighting vendor, or the dress designer. Within 48 hours, most of it had moved into Celeste's private investment account. Another portion went toward a luxury honeymoon package in the Maldives that she had not told Marcus was upgraded. That changed the emotional shape of the crime. Celeste had not stolen because my parents refused to help. They had helped. It was not enough. Nothing was ever enough for Celeste because she did not want support. She wanted a life in which consequences belonged to other people. I still do not know exactly what Warren and Lenora knew at that stage. I know what the records suggest. I know what their later behavior revealed. I know they asked very few questions for people claiming to have sacrificed their savings. I know Lenora bragged for weeks about how no expense had been spared. I know Warren told relatives he had handled the major costs, which was either a lie or proof that he preferred appearing generous to being honest. Maybe they thought Celeste had secured vendor financing. Maybe they thought Marcus's family was quietly covering more than they admitted. Maybe they did not care, as long as the room looked expensive and their youngest daughter looked victorious. That is the ugly thing about willful blindness. Legally, it can be complicated. Morally, it is very simple. They chose not to know. The next folder was security stills. Those came from 2 places. One was my parents' home security system, which Warren had installed after a neighbor's car was broken into and then never learned how to manage properly. I still had admin access because I had set it up. The footage showed Celeste in the den on 3 separate weekends, sitting on the floor with boxes of photos around her. At first glance, it looked innocent, a bride preparing a sentimental slideshow. But in one still, the filing cabinet drawer was open behind her. In another, she held a folder labeled Mara, School Tax. In a third, she took photos of documents with her phone. Maybe a defense attorney could argue those stills did not prove what she did afterward. Fine. That is why I had the rest. The IP logs placed the application submission near Celeste's apartment. The prepaid number had been purchased at a store 2 blocks from her building. The first vendor deposit was made from the same device fingerprint later used to access her bridal portal. Fraud is rarely one perfect piece of evidence. It is a net. And Celeste had walked through every strand believing silk could hide wire. The parent transfer folder contained bank records, messages, and screenshots my mother had sent in family chats without understanding what they revealed. Lenora, your father and I have done more than enough. Please tell the vendors we sent the deposit money. Celeste, I know, Mom. Everything is handled. Stop worrying. Warren, you better make us look good after all this. Celeste, Daddy, everyone is going to be obsessed. Everyone is going to be obsessed. That was the purpose. Not marriage, not love, obsession. I sat in the car reading those messages while the real wedding continued inside the building. And something in me felt both furious and very tired, because the fraud was not separate from the chair beside the kitchen. It was the same belief expressed 2 different ways. Celeste believed my identity was available for her use. Lenora believed my dignity was available for her image. Warren believed my money, patience, and silence were available for family convenience. They all believed Mara Ellison was something to be spent. For 2 months, I had asked myself why I did not report everything immediately. The professional answer was evidence. I needed the file airtight. I needed documentation that would stand up to questions. I needed to separate what I suspected from what I could prove. I knew that if I moved too quickly, Celeste would cry, my mother would deny, my father would rage, and half the family would accuse me of misunderstanding some innocent arrangement. But that was not the whole truth. The personal answer was uglier. I wanted to see if they would stop. I wanted Celeste to call me one night and say, Mara, I did something terrible. I wanted my parents to admit they had seen warning signs. I wanted someone to choose truth before truth became unavoidable. I gave them one last chance, then another, and each time they taught me the same lesson in a different language. The chair was one language. Celeste's hand around my wrist was another. Warren's $150 was the final translation. I was always going to report the fraud. Let me be clear about that. I was never going to absorb the debt. I was never going to let my sister convert my name into her wedding gift. The only question was timing. Would I do it quietly after the wedding, letting Marcus's family discover later that their new daughter-in-law had entered the marriage on stolen credit? Would I let vendors finish serving a reception that might never be paid for? Would I protect the appearance of a family that had never protected me? The answer was sitting in my phone gallery. A white plastic chair, a strip of masking tape, my name in marker. I opened that photo again and stared at it until my breathing slowed. Then I attached the frozen account confirmation to an email draft addressed to Colin Mercer, the general manager of Bellweather Hall. I redacted sensitive personal details, but left enough visible to prove the account was mine. The case was active, and the charges had been disputed as unauthorized. Before I sent it, I hesitated one last time. Not because I doubted the evidence, because some part of me still understood that Once the venue knew, the wedding would begin to collapse in real time. Inside, Celeste was probably smiling for photos. Marcus was probably thanking guests. Lenora was probably accepting compliments. Warren was probably telling someone he had spared no expense. And all of them still believed I had left because I was humiliated. I looked at the chair photo. No, I left because I was done. I looked at the frozen photograph of my name on that masking tape, and then I called the bank again. Not to ask if I was sure, but to request the formal confirmation that would let me pull the financial plug for good. The second call to the bank felt different from the first. The first call had been a line I crossed. The second was the moment I made sure nobody could drag me back over it. I sat in my car with the doors locked, laptop open on the passenger seat, phone connected to the charger because some practical part of me still refused to let a dying battery become the thing that saved Celeste. Outside, the trees shifted in the night wind. Beyond them, Bellweather Hall glowed like a jewel on borrowed time. The fraud agent transferred me to a senior account security specialist. His voice was calm, older, trained for crises involving large numbers and wealthy clients who were not used to being told no. "Miss Ellison," he said, "I understand you are reporting that this account was opened without your authorization." "That is correct. And you are requesting formal confirmation that the account has been frozen due to suspected identity theft?" "Yes. I also need confirmation that pending merchant authorizations are flagged." There was a short pause. Keyboard clicks. A professional silence. "May I ask why you need that confirmation immediately?" I looked at the ballroom windows. "Because the primary merchant is currently providing services at an event funded through that account," I said. "They need to know before they extend additional loss." He did not respond for a moment. When he did, his voice had sharpened. "Understood." That was one thing I appreciated about people who worked around fraud. They did not waste much time pretending not to understand what a sentence meant. If a fraudulent account was actively funding an event, every additional glass of champagne, every plate of food, every hour of music became another charge someone would later fight over. I took me through verification again. Security code, personal identifiers, fraud affidavit acknowledgement, warning that false claims could carry legal consequences. I answered each item cleanly, no drama, no trembling voice, no speech about my sister, just facts. The facts were enough. "Ms. Ellison," he said finally, "the account is now under a hard freeze. New charges will be declined. Pending authorizations are flagged for review. A case file has been opened and you will receive a formal notice by secure message." "I need that notice now," I said. "Even a provisional one." Another pause. "I can generate a preliminary fraud acknowledgement stating the account is disputed as unauthorized by the identity holder." "Please do." While he worked, I opened an email draft to Colin Mercer, general manager of Bellweather Hall. I had found his contact information in the venue contract. Celeste's planner had accidentally copied me on weeks earlier when she wanted family approval on some ridiculous floral upgrade. At the time, my mother had texted me, "Ignore that. Wrong, Mara. Wrong, Mara." Even then, the universe had a sense of humor. The bank message arrived in my secure inbox 3 minutes later. I downloaded it, redacted account digits, my social security reference, and anything the venue did not need. Then I attached the file, along with a copy of my driver's license with sensitive numbers covered and a short written statement. To Colin Mercer. Subject: urgent, fraudulent payment method, associated with Ellison Whitaker event. Mr. Mercer. My name is Mara Ellison. I am the legal identity holder associated with the credit account currently on file for the Ellison Whitaker wedding reception. I did not open this account, authorize its use, or approve charges related to this event. The issuer has opened an active identity theft case and placed the account under a hard freeze. Attached are redacted documents confirming the dispute and my identity. Please contact me immediately. I read it twice. It was clean. It was factual. It was devastating. Then I sent it. For about 90 seconds, nothing happened. Inside the ballroom, the wedding continued. Music pulsed faintly through the glass. I could see shadows moving across the windows, guests dancing, servers passing, a bright blur of my sister's stolen dream. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "This is Colin Mercer." His voice was tight, controlled and skeptical in the way competent managers sound when someone hands them a disaster and expects them not to drop it. "Mr. Mercer, Mara Ellison." "I have your email in front of me," he said. "I need you to understand the seriousness of what you are alleging." "I do. The Ellison-Whitaker event is currently in progress." "I know. The payment arrangements were confirmed in advance. Using an account opened with my stolen identity." He exhaled through his nose. "That is what we need to verify." "I understand. I sent the bank's preliminary acknowledgement and proof that I am the person whose identity is attached to the account." "Yes," he said. "I see that." His voice changed on the last sentence. Not fully convinced yet, but less dismissive. I added, "The bank has placed a hard freeze. If your team attempts additional charges, they will not clear." A longer silence. That was when I knew he understood the scale. Bellweather Hall was not a charity. It was a luxury estate with contracts, staff, vendors, insurance, and risk exposure. Colin Mercer did not need to care about my childhood. He did not need to care about the chair beside the kitchen. He only needed to understand that his venue might be hosting an unfunded $250,000 event, while the named cardholder had just reported identity theft. "Ms. Ellison," he said slowly, "are you physically on the property?" "Yes." "Are you inside the event?" "No. I left the ballroom." "Why?" I looked at the chair photo still open on my laptop. "Because my family seated me beside the kitchen doors with my name written on masking tape." He did not speak. I had not meant to say it. It was not necessary. It was not part of the financial issue. But somehow, after all the clean facts, that small, ugly truth slipped out. When Colin spoke again, his voice was quieter. "I see." No, he did not see. Not really. But he saw enough. "I will need to suspend additional service while we assess the payment status," he said. "I also need to consult our legal and security staff." "That is your decision. It may cause disruption." "I understand. If this claim is false." "It is not." He stopped. I heard movement on his end, a door closing, a muffled voice asking a question. "Send me the fraud case number by text," he said, "and do not delete anything." "I would never." That was the first sentence all night that almost made me smile. After we hung up, I texted the case number. Then I uploaded the core evidence packet to the official fraud reporting portal. Not the entire emotional history, not photos of the chair, just the documents that mattered: application data, verification trail, unauthorized charges, suspected identity misuse, and supporting records. There was no instant FBI raid, no dramatic federal agents kicking open ballroom doors. That is not how real fraud cases begin. They begin with submissions, timestamps, case numbers, acknowledgments. They begin quietly, which is why people like Celeste think they are safe until the machinery starts moving. When the portal generated confirmation, I saved that too. Then I sat back and listened. At first, nothing changed. The music continued. A song ended. Applause rose faintly. Someone shouted happily. For a moment, I wondered whether Colin would delay, whether he would try to keep the reception moving while the adults handled things in some back office. Then a side door opened near the service entrance. A staff member in a black suit stepped outside, phone pressed to his ear. He walked quickly toward the back of the building. Another staff member followed, then another. Through the tall ballroom windows, I saw the first visible shift. Servers stopped moving, not all at once. It rippled. One tray paused, then another. A bartender leaned toward a manager. A coordinator crossed the room too quickly, trying not to look like she was crossing the room too quickly. The band kept playing for maybe another minute. Then, mid-song, the music stopped. Not with a crash, not with drama. It simply died. That was the sound of money disappearing. I stared at the glowing windows, my phone in my lap, my laptop open beside me, and waited for triumph to arrive. It did not. Instead, I felt sick. I thought of Marcus, who had smiled at me when I arrived. I thought of Dr. Whitaker, who had seen the chair and offered me a seat. They were inside that ballroom, too. They were about to be humiliated by a crime they had not committed. That guilt was real. But then, I thought of Celeste telling me I did not belong. I thought of Lenora asking me not to look miserable in the background. I thought of Warren placing $150 on the table and calling me a freeloader. My guilt did not disappear. It simply found its proper size. I had not created the lie. I had only stopped paying for it. My phone buzzed again. A text from Colin. Service is being temporarily suspended. Security and management are reviewing. Local law enforcement may be contacted due to disputed payment and potential fraud. I typed back, understood. I am available by phone. Then I closed my laptop halfway, but not all the way. I wanted the file ready. Inside Bellweather Hall, the fairy tale had started to crack. I could not hear the words yet, only the shape of the panic beginning. A murmur swelled behind the glass. The ballroom's warm lighting dimmed slightly, replaced by colder practical lights near the service areas. It looked less magical immediately. That was the thing about expensive illusions. They required constant funding. Remove the money, and all the enchantment became labor, contracts, invoices, and risk. 5 minutes after I sent the report, the music inside Bellweather Hall stopped. And for the first time all night, my family was about to understand that silence was not weakness. It was evidence gathering. I did not see the first part happen with my own eyes. When the wedding started collapsing, I was still in my car at the edge of the parking lot, laptop half open, phone in my hand, watching Bellweather Hall glow through the trees. What I know about those next minutes came from 4 places. Marcus told me some of it later. Dr. Vivian Whitaker confirmed pieces of it. Colin Mercer gave a formal account through his attorney, and by midnight, 3 different guests had sent me videos. Because when a luxury wedding implodes, people suddenly become documentary filmmakers. The first thing that happened was the music stopped, not dramatically. The band was halfway through a soft instrumental version of a love song when the wedding coordinator leaned close to the lead musician and whispered something. The musician glanced toward the stage, then toward the service doors, then lowered his bow. One by one, the others stopped playing. For about 2 seconds, nobody reacted. People wait for someone else to name a problem before admitting it is real. Then the room began to murmur. A woman near the dance floor laughed nervously and said, "Is this part of the program?" Someone else said, "Maybe speeches?" But there was no microphone announcement yet. No toast, no explanation, just silence spreading where music had been. Then the lighting changed. The warm gold wash over the ballroom dimmed slightly, and the practical side lighting came up near the service areas. Management had instructed staff to suspend the event atmosphere while they assessed the payment issue. In person, it must have felt like a spell breaking. The chandeliers still sparkled, the flowers were still expensive, the champagne towers were still there, but suddenly the room looked less enchanted, more exposed, the kind of beautiful that requires an invoice. Servers stopped next. That was what made guests nervous. Music could pause, lighting could shift. But when waiters stopped moving, people understood something was wrong. A tray of entrees never made it past the service station. Two bartenders stepped back from the premium bar and began covering open bottles. A line formed briefly, then dissolved when one bartender shook his head and said service was temporarily paused. That word traveled quickly. Paused. Not canceled, not over, paused. People can tolerate almost anything if the language stays gentle. Celeste could not. In the second video, she was standing near the front of the ballroom with three bridesmaids and Marcus's cousin. Her gown was arranged perfectly around her, veil trailing behind like a royal train. She was laughing at something, one hand lifted to show her ring. When she noticed the music had stopped, her smile stayed in place for one extra second. Then her eyes moved to the bar, then to the servers, then to the coordinator walking too quickly across the room. I knew that expression. Celeste had worn it when we were children, and a teacher corrected her in front of the class. She had worn it any time the world interrupted the version of herself she was performing. It was not fear yet. It was outrage that reality had failed to ask her permission. She stepped away from the bridesmaids and intercepted the coordinator near the edge of the dance floor. "What is happening?" she demanded. The coordinator kept her voice low. "We are handling a payment verification issue with management." Celeste blinked. "What payment issue?" "I need you to speak with Mr. Mercer." "No," Celeste said. "You need to turn the music back on." The coordinator's eyes flicked toward Marcus, then toward Colin Mercer, who had just entered from the side hall with two staff members behind him. "Whitaker," Celeste snapped. "It is Mrs. Whitaker now." Even on the shaky guest video, you can see the coordinator freeze for half a second. That was Celeste in one sentence. The room was beginning to collapse around her, and she still reached for the name like it could function as a weapon. Across the ballroom, Warren noticed the disruption. My father had been holding court near one of the front tables, a glass of scotch in his hand, telling some version of the story where he and Lenora had sacrificed everything to give their daughter the wedding she deserved. He saw guests turning their heads. He saw staff standing still. He saw the bar closing. And because Warren believed volume was leadership, he marched toward Colin. "What the hell is going on?" Colin did not take the microphone at first. That matters. He tried to keep the disaster contained. He spoke to Warren, Celeste, and Lenora in a tight group near the stage, with Marcus approaching from the other side. The video does not catch every word, but Marcus later filled in the gaps. Colin said there was a serious payment authorization issue. Warren said everything had been paid. Colin said the payment method was under active dispute. Celeste said that was impossible. Lenora said there had to be a mistake, and that management should not embarrass the families in front of guests. Colin suggested they step into a private office. That was the last reasonable off-ramp. They did not take it. Warren raised his voice first. "We are not going anywhere," he said. "You are not stopping my daughter's wedding over a clerical error." Colin tried to keep his face neutral. "Mr. Ellison, we need to pause service until payment authorization is resolved." "I authorized it," Warren snapped. That was when Marcus spoke. "You authorized what?" The video angle shifts there because the guest filming clearly realized the groom had entered the conversation. Warren turned toward him. Marcus, this is a vendor issue. We will handle it. But Marcus had the kind of calm that makes panic look even worse beside it. Who is the card holder? Celeste said his name sharply. Marcus. He did not look at her. He looked at Colin. Who is the card holder? Colin hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus enough to keep asking. Celeste grabbed Colin's arm. Do not discuss private financial information in the middle of my reception. Colin looked down at her hand until she released him. Then he took the microphone. Not because he wanted to create a spectacle. I believe that. But by then, the spectacle had already started. Guests were standing, phones were out, the bar was closed, staff had stopped serving. Warren was demanding answers loudly enough for half the room to hear. Colin's announcement was careful. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we are experiencing a serious payment authorization issue. Service is temporarily suspended while we review the matter. We appreciate your patience. A wave of whispers rolled through the ballroom. Payment authorization issue. It sounded almost harmless if you wanted it to. A bank hold, a decline charge, a rich person's inconvenience. Then Celeste made sure it would not stay harmless. She took the microphone from Colin's hand. My sister did this, she said. The room shifted. In the videos, you can see heads turning before she even says my name, as if every family has a fault line and guests instinctively know when they are about to see it open. My sister Mara has been jealous of me her entire life, Celeste said. She is unstable, and she has been trying to ruin this wedding because she cannot stand that I am happy. I was sitting in my car when those words were spoken. I did not hear them live. But when I watched the video later, my body still reacted as if I had been standing there. My stomach tightened. My jaw locked. Some old reflex inside me whispered, defend yourself, explain, make them understand. Then I looked at the rest of the video and realized the chair had already spoken for me. Celeste pointed toward the back of the ballroom. She is sitting right there, she said. Mara, stand up. Tell them you lied. Tell them you called the bank because you wanted attention. Everyone turned. Toward the kitchen doors, toward the service corner, toward the cheap white plastic folding chair, but I was gone. Only the chair remained. The torn strip of masking tape was still on the back. Mara. And on the cocktail table beside it, untouched under the cold practical lights, were the $100 bill and the 50 Warren had thrown down. The camera zoomed slightly. Whoever was filming understood the image before the room did. An empty chair by the kitchen. A name on tape. Cash left like payment for an unwanted guest. That silence was different, the music stopping. The first silence was confusion. This one was comprehension. Not complete comprehension. Nobody knew everything yet. But people understood enough to feel the story Celeste was telling begin to crack. If I was the jealous, unstable sister, why had I been seated beside the kitchen? If I had come to cause a scene, why was I gone? If my family valued me, why did my place look like a punishment? Celeste realized the room had seen too much. Her face changed. She tried to recover. Mara is dramatic, she said. She probably moved herself there for sympathy. That might have worked on people who knew my family and had spent years accepting their version of me. It did not work on Dr. Vivian Whitaker. She stood from table one. Dr. Whitaker did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The people around her quieted because authority, real authority, does not beg for attention. That is not true, she said. Celeste turned toward her, startled. What? I saw Mara seated there before dinner service, Dr. Whitaker said. I asked Lenora why the bride's sister was beside the kitchen. Lenora told me Mara had requested a discreet seat because she was socially anxious. Several guests looked toward my mother. Lenora's face, according to Marcus, went completely still. Celeste looked at Lenora. Warren looked at Lenora. The lie was small compared to the fraud, but small lies are often where big collapses begin because they prove a person is willing to reshape reality even when the truth is visible from 6 feet away. Marcus took the microphone from Celeste, not roughly. He simply removed it from her hand, and she let him because the room had shifted away from her. He looked at Colin. I want to see the payment file. Celeste grabbed his sleeve. That single word told more than any confession could have. Marcus looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Why not? Because this is ridiculous. She is trying to embarrass me. Who is the card holder? He asked again. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. There they were, the tears that had moved mountains in my parents' house. But the Whitakers had not raised Marcus to treat tears as evidence. Colin lowered his voice, but the nearest phone still caught it. The account on file appears to be associated with Mara Ellison. The ballroom did not explode. It inhaled. That is the only way I can describe it. One collective breath pulled into 200 well-dressed bodies as the shape of the scandal finally entered the room. Mara Ellison, not Warren, not Lenora, not Celeste, the sister by the kitchen, the sister who was gone, the sister Celeste had just accused of jealousy. Warren started talking immediately. That cannot be right. There must be some administrative mix-up. Mara must have... Marcus cut him off. Why would Mara's account be paying for our wedding? Our wedding. That word did something to Celeste. Her face collapsed for the first time, not into guilt, but into the fear of losing ownership. Marcus, please, she said. Not here. He looked around the room, at the paused servers, the closed bar, the guests holding phones, the empty chair, the cash, his mother standing like judgment in emerald silk. Then where? He asked. Where would you like me to learn whether my marriage began with fraud? Nobody moved. Then, from somewhere near the back, a guest whispered too loudly, "Oh my God." That broke the room open. Whispers became voices. Voices became movement. People stood. Phones rose higher. One of Celeste's bridesmaids began crying. Another backed away from her as if scandal were contagious. Lenora moved toward Marcus with both hands raised. This is a misunderstanding, she said. A family misunderstanding. Dr. Whitaker stepped forward. No, she said. It is not. The words cut cleanly through the room. Celeste turned toward the kitchen corner again, as if I might still appear and fix everything for her. But there was only the empty chair. And by then, that empty chair had done more damage than anything I could have said into a microphone. Marcus did not shout. That was the first thing several people told me later, and for some reason, it stayed with me. In a room full of whispers, crying bridesmaids, frozen servers, and guests pretending not to film while obviously filming, Marcus Whitaker did not raise his voice. He stood in the center of that ballroom with the microphone in one hand, looking at Colin Mercer as if calm itself were the last piece of furniture still standing. I want to see the payment file, he said again. Celeste grabbed his sleeve. Marcus, please. He looked down at her fingers. Slowly, she let go. That small movement said more than either of them probably understood at the time. For months, Celeste had touched him like ownership. A hand on his arm, fingers at his cuff, palm against his chest for photographs. That night, for the first time, Marcus looked at her hand as if he had finally recognized it as something trying to control him. Colin hesitated. He was a venue manager, not a judge. He had contracts, privacy obligations, legal exposure, and two families melting down in front of 200 guests. But he also had a disputed account, a formal fraud acknowledgement, and a groom asking why his wedding had stopped. Mr. Whittaker, Colin said quietly, I can show you limited information. I cannot disclose everything here. Show me enough. Celeste shook her head. No, this is private. Marcus turned to her. Our wedding just stopped in front of everyone we know, he said. Private is gone. I was not there for that sentence. I heard it later in a video one of his cousins sent me with the message, I think you should see this. I watched it once, then paused for almost 5 minutes before I could continue. Because it is one thing to know the truth. It is another thing to watch someone else discover the damage in real time. Colin led Marcus a few steps away from the microphone and angled a tablet toward him. Dr. Vivian Whittaker came with him. Celeste followed despite Colin's request for space. Warren and Lenora hovered behind her like people approaching a fire and insisting they could still negotiate with smoke. Colin opened the payment record. The primary account holder name appeared at the top, Mara Ellison. Marcus stared at it. He did not react immediately, at least not in the way people expected. He did not curse. He did not turn red. He did not spin towards Celeste with a dramatic accusation. He simply looked at my name on the screen and went still. That stillness scared Celeste more than yelling would have. Marcus, she said, her voice thin. You don't understand. He looked at the account holder name again, then at the frozen service staff, then at the empty chair near the kitchen, then at Celeste. Why is your sister's name on the card that paid for our wedding? The question landed in the room like a glass dropped on marble. Celeste opened her mouth, but no answer came out. Marcus continued, quieter now. You told me your parents were covering the reception. They were, Warren said quickly. Marcus did not look at him. Then why is Mara's name here? Warren's face darkened. There must be an error. Mara works in finance. She probably inserted herself somehow. Dr. Whittaker turned her head slightly toward him. Inserted herself into being defrauded? Lenora stepped forward, hands clasped. Vivian, please, we can explain privately. This is a family issue. Dr. Whittaker's eyes moved to the white folding chair still visible near the service doors. A family issue, she repeated. Is that what you called it when you seated your own daughter beside the kitchen? Lenora flinched. Celeste started crying then. I had seen that performance my entire life. The sudden collapse of her face, the trembling lips, the shining eyes angled toward whoever she needed most. When we were children, those tears could turn a broken vase into my fault. They could turn a failed test into a family emergency. They could make Warren forget evidence and Lenora rewrite memory. But Marcus had not been raised in our house. He did not move toward her. Mara hates me, Celeste said. She has always hated me. She was jealous from the beginning. You don't know what she is like. She is cold. She tracks everything. She collects things and waits. She wanted to ruin this. Marcus looked down at the payment file again. She did not open this account, he said. You don't know that? She is the one who reported it. Celeste wiped at her face. Because she wanted attention. Marcus's expression changed then. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Disappointment reaching the end of its patience. You think she stole her own identity to pay for your wedding, let you enjoy most of the day, seated herself beside the kitchen, left the room without making a scene, then reported the card so everyone would look at an empty chair? Celeste said nothing. Even Warren looked briefly uncertain. That was the problem with Celeste's lies. They worked best in emotional fog. Under direct light, they became ridiculous. Dr. Whitaker stepped closer to the tablet. Colin, was the account frozen by the cardholder? Yes, Colin said. The identity holder reported the account as unauthorized. We received preliminary confirmation from the issuer. The identity holder being Mara, Dr. Whitaker said. Yes. She turned to Celeste and Lenora. This is not a misunderstanding. Lenora's composure cracked at the edges. You do not know our family. No, Dr. Whitaker said. But I know enough. You hid your own daughter beside a kitchen while spending money stolen in her name. There is no private explanation that makes that decent. Several guests heard that clearly. In one video, you can hear someone whisper, Jesus. Celeste looked around the room as if searching for a person still willing to believe her first. A bridesmaid would not meet her eyes. One of Warren's business friends stepped backward. My mother's tennis friends stood clustered together, faces bright with the horror of women witnessing scandal and already preparing to retell it. Marcus looked at Celeste. Was anything real? That was the question. Not, did you steal? Not, did you lie? Was anything real? I have watched that clip more times than I should admit. Not because I enjoy Celeste's pain. I don't. But because Marcus asked the question, I never had the courage to ask my family in those exact words. Was the love real? Was the concern real? Was any apology real? Was I ever real to you? Or only useful? Celeste's tears kept falling, but she did not answer. Maybe because the honest answer would have destroyed her faster than silence. Marcus slowly removed his wedding band. The room seemed to hold its breath again. He looked at the ring in his palm. Gold, simple, elegant, probably selected after 3 tastings, 2 fittings, 4 mood boards, and 1,000 declarations about forever. It had been on his finger for less than an hour, and already it looked like evidence. Celeste reached for him. Don't, she whispered. He stepped back. Marcus, please, we just got married. He closed his fingers around the ring, then opened them again, as if testing whether the symbol still meant anything if the truth underneath it had rotted. A vow made without truth is not a vow, he said. That line was not loud, it was not theatrical, but it cut through the ballroom because everyone understood it was the end. Celeste made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not crying, not screaming, something smaller. A person realizing charm had finally reached a locked door. Lenora rushed toward Marcus. Please, don't make any decisions tonight. Everyone is emotional. Celeste made mistakes, but she loves you. She loves this family. Dr. Whitaker turned on my mother then. No, Lenora, she loved access to this family. There is a difference. Warren's pride finally snapped. Now wait just a damn minute, he said. You are not going to stand here and talk about my daughter like she is some criminal. Colin's face tightened. Marcus looked at Warren. Did you know? The question froze him. Know what? Did you know Mara's identity was used? Warren puffed up. Absolutely not. Did you ask how Celeste was paying balances beyond what you gave her? Warren's mouth opened, closed. Marcus continued. Did you verify anything? We trusted our daughter. No, Dr. Whitaker said softly. You protected your favorite version of her. That sentence reached Warren. I could see it in the recording. His face shifted, not into remorse, but into offense. People like my father can survive accusations of negligence. They cannot survive accurate descriptions of their motives. Lenora started crying too, but unlike Celeste, she cried quietly, carefully, one hand near her face as if she still knew cameras might be recording. This is not who we are, she said. That was when Dr. Whitaker looked toward the chair again. Yes, she said. I believe it is. The ballroom had become impossible to control. Some guests were leaving. Others were pretending to leave slowly so they could hear more. The coordinator was near tears. The bartender stood behind a covered bar with the expression of a man who knew he would never forget this shift. The photographer had stopped taking professional photos, though several guests had taken over that job without being asked. Celeste suddenly turned toward the kitchen corner. For 1 second, I think she forgot I was gone. Mara, she said, as if I might still be there waiting to fix everything. But the chair was empty. The money was still on the cocktail table, and I was outside where her voice could not reach me. That seemed to push her over the edge. She gathered the front of her gown in both hands and ran toward the side doors. Celeste! Lenora called, but Celeste did not stop. Her veil caught briefly on the corner of a chair. A bridesmaid lunged to free it. The movement made the whole thing look even worse, like the wedding itself was trying to hold her back and failing. Marcus did not follow immediately. He stood there with the ring still in his hand. Dr. Whitaker touched his arm. Only then did he move, not chasing his bride, following the truth. Later, he told me he already knew she was not running to apologize. He knew because of the way she looked toward the exits, not toward him. Panic had stripped away the performance, and underneath it was not remorse, it was survival. She ran outside looking for me, not to say she was sorry, not to ask what she had done to my life, not to admit that she had stolen what was mine. She ran outside to demand that I save her. Celeste found my car because she knew what escape looked like on me. I had parked at the far edge of the lot, beneath a line of dark trees where the glow from Bellweather Hall reached only in broken pieces. From there, the estate looked less like a mansion and more like a stage set after the audience had gone home. The windows still burned gold, but inside them, shadows moved too quickly. My phone buzzed once with a text from Colin. Local police have been contacted. Please remain available. I stared at the message, then locked the screen. That was when I heard my name. Not spoken. Screamed. Celeste's voice tore through the parking lot before I saw her. Then she appeared beneath the lanterns, gathering her lace gown in both hands, veil dragging crookedly behind her. She did not look like a bride anymore. She looked like a woman running from the truth and angry that it had followed her outside. Lenora hurried after her, one hand pressed to her chest, her champagne dress flashing under the lights. Warren came behind them with his jacket open and his face twisted into the expression he used when he wanted someone else to be afraid. They found my car at the same time. Celeste reached me first and slapped both hands against the driver's side window. "Open the door!" I looked at her through the glass. For years, my sister had treated every closed door as a temporary inconvenience. If she cried, someone opened it. If she shouted, someone unlocked it. If she claimed she needed something, someone handed her a key. This time, door stayed locked. I lowered the window 4 inches, not enough for her to reach in, enough for her to hear me. "What did you do?" she screamed. I kept my voice quiet. "I reported identity theft." "You ruined my wedding!" "No, I stopped paying for it." Her face contorted. "You're insane!" Lenora reached the car, breathless and trembling, but still trying to arrange her panic into something elegant. "Mara, this has gone too far. You need to call the bank right now." "No." My mother blinked as if the word had struck her. "You made your point," she said. "Everyone is upset. Celeste is humiliated. Marcus's family is humiliated. Your father and I are humiliated. Now, fix it." I stared at her. Even then, she listed everyone except me. "I cannot fix it," I said. "Yes, you can. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you overreacted. The account is part of an active fraud investigation now. I am not calling a bank to lie for Celeste. Celeste laughed sharply. Lie? You are such a martyr. It was one account. One fraudulent account in my name. You weren't even using that credit. There it was. The logic of a thief who believed unused meant available. Warren stepped closer to the window. Enough. You have made your little scene. You will call the bank, withdraw the claim, and tell the venue this was a family misunderstanding. I looked at him. Under the parking lot lights, my father seemed smaller than he had in the ballroom. Without the chandeliers, the tuxedo, and the audience, he was just an aging man with scotch on his breath, demanding that the daughter he had insulted save him from embarrassment. No, I said again. His jaw tightened. Do not speak to me that way. You threw money at me and called me a freeloader. That was before you decided to destroy your sister. That was before you knew your sister had been using my stolen identity. Warren's face flickered, not with remorse, with irritation that I had corrected the story. Family protects family, he said. Family does not steal from family. You earn enough to absorb it. The sentence fell into the car like something rotten. Lenora closed her eyes briefly, not because she disagreed, but because he had said the quiet part too plainly. I leaned closer to the window. Say that again. Warren looked away. No, I said. Say it clearly. Say you think I should absorb $250,000 in fraudulent charges because Celeste wanted a better wedding. Celeste slammed her palm against the glass again. It was not just a wedding. I turned to her. Then what was it? Her breathing was ragged. Mascara had started to darken beneath her eyes. Her veil had slipped from the careful pins. A strand of hair clung to her cheek. For the first time all night, nothing about her was curated. It was my life, she said. It was the life I was supposed to have. The life you stole. The life I deserved, Lenora whispered. Celeste. But my sister did not stop. That was the thing about collapse. Once the performance breaks, the truth often comes out wearing rage because rage feels safer than shame. Celeste bent toward the window, eyes bright and furious. You always had everything, she said. I almost laughed. I had everything? Yes. The grades, the scholarships, the job, the apartment, the money, the respect. I earned those things. You hoarded them. The word was so absurd, I stared at her. Hoarded. You never helped me the way you could have. I gave you money for years. You gave little amounts and acted like a saint. I gave what I could without destroying myself. That is exactly what I mean, she snapped. You always had limits. You always made me feel like I was asking for too much. Because you were. Her face twisted. You don't even know how to be rich. You sit in an office all day staring at spreadsheets. You buy boring clothes. You live alone in that cold apartment like it is some kind of achievement. What is the point of having money if nobody sees it? I sat very still. Behind Celeste, I saw movement near the portico. Marcus had come outside. Dr. Vivian Whitaker was beside him. They stopped several yards away, partly hidden by the shadow of a stone column. Celeste did not see them. Lenora did, and the blood drained from her face. Celeste, Lenora said again, sharper this time. Stop talking. But Celeste had waited her whole life to say this, and now that the world was ending, she could not resist making sure I understood her version of it. I belong with people like the Whitakers, she said. Not you, me. I know how to live that life. I know how to host, how to dress, how to make people look. Marcus needed a wife who could stand beside him, not some bitter accountant who thinks a credit score is a personality. I looked past her to Marcus. His face did not move, but something in him seemed to close. Celeste kept going. I took what should have been mine. The parking lot went quiet. Even. Warren stopped breathing for a second. Celeste heard the silence, but misunderstood it as my weakness. You don't even need it, she said. That is what makes me sick. You have all that credit, all that income, all that access, and you waste it on being invisible. I was going to turn it into something real by using my name, by using what this family should have given me. You mean what I built? You built it because Mom and Dad pushed you, she spat. You should be grateful. If they had babied you the way they babied me, you would be nothing too. That one landed. Not because it was true, but because buried under the cruelty was an accidental confession. Celeste knew. She knew our parents had babied her. She knew I had been forced into strength while she was protected from consequences. She knew exactly how the system worked. She just believed it still owed her more. Marcus stepped out of the shadow. Celeste. My sister froze. Slowly, she turned. For 1 second, she looked like a child caught stealing from a purse. Then the bride returned, or tried to. Her shoulders softened. Her mouth trembled. She lifted one hand toward him. Marcus, she whispered. I was upset. He looked at her as if he were seeing two women at once, the one he married and the one who had just confessed in a parking lot. I heard you, he said. You heard her provoking me. I heard you say, you took what should have been yours. Celeste shook her head. That is not what I meant. What did you mean? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dr. Whitaker moved beside her son. She did not look angry in the way Lenora looked angry. There was no flailing, no performance, no panic. Her disgust was quiet, and somehow that made it worse. Celeste, she said, did you use Mara's identity to finance this wedding? Celeste's eyes filled again. I was under pressure. That is not an answer. I wanted everything to be perfect. That is also not an answer. Warren stepped forward. Vivian, this is not the place. Dr. Whitaker turned to him. You are correct. The place for this will be with attorneys and investigators. He recoiled as if she had slapped him. Lenora began crying in earnest. Please, we are all emotional. Celeste made a mistake, but she loves Marcus. She loves your family. Marcus looked at my mother. She loved what my family represented. No, Celeste said quickly. No, I love you. Marcus removed his tuxedo jacket. The movement was so unexpected that everyone watched in silence. He slipped it from his shoulders and held it for a moment. The jacket was elegant, perfectly tailored, part of the wedding package Celeste had curated down to the last cufflink. Then he handed it to his mother. I do not want to keep wearing anything connected to this, he said. Celeste made a small, broken sound. Marcus, please, we just took vows. He looked at her left hand, where her ring glittered beneath the parking lot lights. Vows mean nothing without truth. You can't annul a marriage because of a misunderstanding. This was not a misunderstanding. You're abandoning me? No, he said. I am leaving a fraud. The words hit harder than shouting would have. Celeste turned back toward my car. Mara, tell him you are exaggerating. I almost felt sad for her then. Not enough to save her, but enough to recognize how completely she had misunderstood me. Even now, after everything, she believed I existed to manage the consequences of her choices. I have already told the truth, I said. She stepped toward the window again. You hate me that much? I loved you longer than you deserved. That silenced her. For a heartbeat, I saw something human move across her face. Not remorse, maybe memory, maybe the ghost of two little girls hiding under blankets during thunderstorms. Then it vanished, replaced by panic. Police lights appeared at the far end of the drive. Blue and red moved over the trees, over the white flowers, over Celeste's dress. Sirens were not screaming yet, just approaching, controlled, real. Colin must have called local law enforcement about the disputed payment and suspected fraud. It was not a dramatic arrest scene. It was not federal agents storming a reception. It was the beginning of the machinery my family could no longer charm, guilt, or scream into stopping. Lenora saw the lights and turned on me. "Mara, please," she said. "Please call them. Tell them not to come." "I do not control the police. You started this. Celeste started this when she used my identity. You could have waited." "I did." My mother flinched. "I waited through the fraud alert," I said. "I waited through the charges. I waited through the seating chart. I waited through the chair. I waited when you lied to Dr. Whittaker. I waited when Celeste grabbed my wrist. I waited when Warren threw $150 at me and called me a freeloader." Warren's eyes dropped, only for a second, but I saw it. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the folded bills. Before leaving the ballroom, I had taken them from the cocktail table. I do not remember deciding to. Maybe some colder part of me knew there would be a final use for them. I pushed the $150 through the 4-inch gap in the window. The bills slid out and fluttered onto the pavement near my father's shoes. "Here's my contribution," I said. "Family does not charge for dinner." Warren stared down at the money. For once, he had no speech, no lecture about respect, no command, no story that made him noble. The sirens grew closer. Celeste began sobbing. Lenora reached for her, but Celeste pulled away and turned toward Marcus again. "Please," she said, "do not let this be how we end." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "We ended before we began." I rolled up the window. Celeste slapped the glass once, shouting my name, but the sound became muffled and distant. That was what a boundary felt like, I realized. Not cruelty, not revenge, a pane of glass between me and people who had mistaken access for love. I started the engine. No one moved to stop me. As I pulled out of the parking space, I saw Dr. Whittaker standing beside Marcus beneath the lanterns. She was still holding his tuxedo jacket. Warren stood over the $150 like a man looking at the wreckage of his authority. Lenora was crying into one hand. Celeste stood in her ruined perfection while police lights washed over her gown. I did not stay to watch every detail. I had spent my whole life watching my family hurt me. That night, I chose not to watch anymore. I drove away before the officers reached the front entrance. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was Bellweather Hall glowing behind them all, beautiful and hollow, like every lie looks right before the lights come on. Consequences did not arrive the way people imagine. There was no single moment where everything became finished. No judge slamming a gavel the next morning. No dramatic headline with Celeste's ruined face beneath it. No federal agents dragging her down the steps of Bellweather Hall while guests applauded. Real consequences are slower than that. They come as phone calls you do not want to answer. Emails from attorneys, certified letters, frozen accounts, meetings in small offices with people who do not care how pretty you looked in your wedding dress. They come as invoices that still exist after the flowers die. The morning after the wedding, I woke up in a hotel room I barely remembered checking into. For several seconds, I did not know where I was. Then my phone lit up on the nightstand, and everything came back. 47 missed calls, 32 unread texts, 6 voicemails. Most were from numbers I had already decided would not own my attention anymore. Lenora called 11 times. Warren called 7. Celeste called until her number stopped appearing and unknown numbers started replacing it. A cousin texted, "I know you're upset, but you need to call your mother." My Aunt Patricia left a voicemail saying, "This has gone too far. Celeste made a mistake, but family does not destroy family in public." I deleted it. Not because I felt nothing, because I felt too much. And I finally understood that feeling something did not require me to respond. The bank investigation moved first. Within days, I was asked to provide a formal affidavit, identification records, proof of residence, and a detailed statement of unauthorized activity. I sent everything through my attorney because by then, I had decided I would not handle my family directly anymore. I had spent years being cross-examined at kitchen tables by people who already knew the verdict. This time, I wanted professionals in the room. The credit issuer confirmed that the account had been opened using my stolen identity. The application data, verification number, device records, and address history all pointed toward Celeste. The charges were flagged as unauthorized. My liability was suspended pending the final investigation. That sentence gave me more relief than I expected. My liability was suspended, not my pain, not my history, not the damage to my nervous system, but the debt, at least, would not sit on my shoulders while everyone debated whether Celeste had meant well. Celeste's situation became serious quickly. Her attorney, from what I later heard, told her prison was a real possibility if she refused to cooperate. Identity theft was not a family misunderstanding. It was not an emotional overstep. It was not a bride getting carried away with wedding stress. It was a crime. Maybe several crimes, depending on how prosecutors interpreted the application, the verification call, the electronic signature, the vendor charges, and the movement of funds. I am careful with this part because I do not want to pretend I know every legal detail. I was not in every meeting. I was not copied on every filing. Some information came through formal channels. Some came through relatives who had suddenly discovered they cared about truth now that gossip had turned into evidence. What I know is this: Celeste had to cooperate. She had to provide records. She had to explain the prepaid phone. She had to account for the wedding charges. She had to return what money she could. And for the first time in her life, crying did not make the room rearrange itself around her. Warren and Lenora tried to save her. Of course they did. At first, they insisted they had been deceived too. They told relatives Celeste was overwhelmed. They said wedding vendors had pressured her. They said Marcus's family had expectations. They said I had always been unforgiving. They said everything except the simple sentence that would have cost them pride. Our daughter stole from our other daughter, and we helped create the kind of person who believed she could. To reduce Celeste's exposure, they started liquidating what they had. Retirement accounts were touched. Savings disappeared. Lenora sold jewelry she used to claim had sentimental value. Warren sold the boat he had bought during his midlife crisis and pretended was an investment. Then the house went on the market. The listing photos made me feel strange. There was the den with the unlocked filing cabinet. There was the kitchen where I had been told to be mature. There was the staircase where Celeste used to pose before school dances, while Lenora adjusted her hair and told me to stand aside so I would not block the light. The house sold faster than I expected. Maybe scandal lowers the price, but speeds the decision. My parents told people they were downsizing. Nobody believed them. They moved into a small apartment outside their old neighborhood, the kind of place Lenora once described as perfectly fine for people starting out. She was not starting out. She was starting over with fewer friends and no audience willing to pretend it was graceful. Her club membership disappeared quietly. No announcement. No confrontation. Just calls not returned, lunch invitations that stopped coming, committee emails that no longer included her. For a woman like Lenora, social exile was almost worse than financial loss. She had built her identity around being seen in the right rooms. Now, the right rooms had decided she was bad furniture. Warren's collapse was different. His friends did not call him cruel. Men like Warren rarely use moral language with each other when cowardice will do. They simply became unavailable. Golf games were full. Drinks were postponed. Business contacts responded slowly. Nobody wanted financial scandal near them, especially not one involving a father who had bragged about paying for a wedding that turned out to be funded through his older daughter's stolen identity. Bellweather Hall banned the Ellison family permanently. That detail reached me through Colin Mercer's attorney, buried inside correspondence about the disputed charges and unpaid balances. I read it twice, not because I cared about returning, but because there was something satisfying about a place that had seated me beside the kitchen later, deciding my family was not welcome through the front door. The vendors pursued what they were owed: the florist, the lighting company, the band, the premium bar service, the transportation provider, the linen rental company. A wedding that had lasted only a few broken hours continued generating bills for months. That was one of the quietest forms of justice. The fantasy ended. The invoices did not. Celeste lost her consulting work first. She had branded herself online as a luxury experience strategist, which mostly meant she advised women with rich fiancés on how to make other women jealous. After the wedding collapse spread through both families' networks, then beyond them, clients disappeared. No reputable bride wanted to hire a woman whose own wedding had become a cautionary tale about fraud, entitlement, and unpaid vendors. She tried to control the narrative online. For 2 weeks, she posted vague quotes about betrayal, jealousy, and protecting your peace. The comments were sympathetic at first. Then someone who had been at the wedding replied, "Girl, didn't you steal your sister's identity?" The post vanished within an hour. Eventually, Celeste took a retail job. I did not mock that. Honest work is honest work. What I noticed was how much she hated being ordinary. She had not feared poverty as much as invisibility. Standing behind a counter, asking customers if they wanted a receipt. Living with our parents in an apartment that had no marble entryway and no place to stage a perfect life. That was the kind of consequence no court could design better. The three of them turned on one another exactly the way I expected. Warren blamed Lenora for spoiling Celeste. Lenora blamed Warren for not earning enough to give Celeste the life she wanted without forcing her into desperation. Celeste blamed both of them for failing to protect her when things got difficult, as if protection from accountability had been part of the original parenting contract. And me? I became the villain because I was not there to absorb the blame. That was what finally made me understand my role in the family system. I had not just been the responsible one, I had been the pressure valve. When something went wrong, blame flowed toward me, and everyone else got to stay intact. Once I left, the pressure had nowhere soft to land, so the whole thing cracked. I blocked them first, then I blocked relatives. Then I blocked relatives, spouses, old neighbors, and one woman from my mother's tennis club who somehow found my work email to tell me that forgiveness is also a form of strength. I replied once. So is legal counsel. Then I had my attorney send cease and desist letters after the harassment continued. That letter did what my pain never had. It made them stop contacting me, at least directly. Peace did not feel good at first. That surprised me. I had imagined freedom would arrive like sunlight. Instead, It felt like standing in a house after the power goes out. Quiet everywhere, too quiet. No footsteps coming down the hall, no phone buzzing with accusations, no mother demanding emotional labor, no father redefining disrespect until it meant disagreement, no sister needing to be rescued from a disaster she had created. For weeks, I woke up tense. I checked my phone before remembering there would be nothing there. I rehearsed arguments in the shower with people who no longer had access to me. I sat at my desk and caught myself preparing defenses against accusations nobody was currently making. Trauma has muscle memory. Even after the danger leaves, your body keeps reaching for armor. Some nights, guilt came too. Not clean guilt, complicated guilt. I remembered Celeste as a little girl, climbing into my bed during thunderstorms. I remembered braiding her hair before school because Lenora was too tired. I remembered the sister she might have been if our parents had not turned love into a limited resource and accountability into something only I had to carry. Then I remembered her face in the parking lot. I took what should have been mine, and the guilt would pass. I did not become happy all at once. I became unavailable first, then rested, then clear. The silence that had once felt like abandonment slowly became something else. Space. For the first time in my life, nobody was spending me. Nobody was borrowing my strength and calling it love. Nobody was asking me to pay for belonging. Freedom did not feel like fireworks. At first, it felt like silence. Then I realized silence was exactly what I had been fighting for. 3 months after the wedding, I was in my Manhattan office when Tessa Rowe knocked lightly on the glass door. My office was on the 26th floor, high enough that the city looked less like chaos and more like design. The East River flashed between buildings. Taxis moved below like yellow sparks. On my desk sat 2 monitors, one legal pad, one coffee gone cold, and no messages from my family. That last part still felt new. For years, quiet had meant waiting for the next demand. A call from Lenora, a crisis from Celeste, a lecture from Warren disguised as concern. But now my phone stayed still, and slowly my body had stopped mistaking peace for danger. Tessa held a tablet against her chest. You have a referral call at 2. From who? Whitaker Health Group. I looked up. Tessa knew enough not to ask the obvious question. She had been my assistant for 4 years, which meant she had seen me walk into meetings after family disasters and still perform like nothing had happened. She also knew that after the wedding, I had changed. Not dramatically. I did not become softer or harder. I became less available for nonsense. Do you want me to decline? She asked. I looked out at the skyline. Dr. Vivian Whitaker's face came back to me first. Not from the parking lot, but from the ballroom, when she had looked at that chair and understood the insult before anyone explained it. Then Marcus, standing beneath the lanterns, tired and stripped of illusion, saying vows meant nothing without truth. No, I said. I'll take it. The call was formal, professional, exactly the way I preferred it. Dr. Whitaker's assistant explained that Whitaker Health Group was considering a major acquisition and had concerns about hidden liabilities inside the target company's books. There were unusual vendor relationships, possible related party transactions, and gaps in internal controls that their legal team did not like. They needed forensic review, discretion, independence, someone with no tolerance for manipulation. A week later, I flew to Atlanta and walked into a conference room wearing a charcoal suit, low heels, and no emotional expectations. Dr. Whitaker stood when I entered. Mara, she said. Dr. Whitaker. There was no dramatic embrace, no tearful speech, No attempt to turn shared trauma into intimacy. She simply extended her hand and shook mine like I was a professional whose time mattered. That meant more to me than sympathy ever could have. Marcus was there too, seated near the end of the table with a legal pad in front of him. He looked different from the groom at Bellweather Hall. Quieter, tired maybe, but steadier. No ring, no performance. When our eyes met, he gave me a small nod. Not romantic, not loaded, respectful. That was enough. The meeting lasted 2 hours. I asked for access to acquisition models, vendor ledgers, board packets, audit adjustments, and correspondence related to disputed liabilities. One attorney looked mildly offended by the scope. Dr. Whitaker looked pleased. At the end, she said, "We requested you specifically." I assumed, her mouth curved slightly, you have a reputation for being difficult, for being precise. That costs extra. This time she smiled. Good. Precision should. After the meeting, Marcus walked me to the elevator. For a few seconds, we stood in a hallway lined with framed photographs of hospital wings, scholarship ceremonies, and community health projects funded by his family's foundation. I never thanked you properly, he said. You did not need to. I think I did. I looked at him. I was not asking me to comfort him. He was not trying to rewrite that night into something beautiful. He was simply acknowledging the truth, and I had learned how rare that was. I'm sorry it reached you the way it did, I said. He looked down the quiet hallway. A private lie would have taken longer to escape. The elevator arrived. Before I stepped in, he said, "She told me you were jealous of her." I smiled a little, but there was no humor in it. She told herself that too. He nodded slowly. Then he said, "My mother saw the chair before she knew anything else. She said it told her everything." The doors began to close. So did I said. Back in New York that night, I returned to my apartment, took off my heels, and stood by the window for a long time. The city glittered below me, not like Bellweather Hall, not like a rented fantasy trying to convince strangers it was permanent. Manhattan glittered because it was alive, indifferent, and real. It did not care whether I looked successful. It did not care whether my family approved. It just existed, sharp and bright, asking nothing from me. My phone was quiet. My home was quiet. My life was quiet. And for once, quiet did not feel like abandonment. It felt like ownership. People say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes blood is just the first place people learn how to bleed you dry. I did not lose my family that night. I found out I had already lost them years ago. The only difference was this: I stopped paying for the privilege. My name is Mara Ellison. I hunt fraud for a living. And the first fraud I ever truly exposed was the family that taught me to doubt myself.